So one of the cool new features at ISS this year is actually that you'll have the opportunity to sit down with us almost in a roundtable setting after the presentation. It's in Andros A, so it's going to be just up the hallway here and to the right. So if you have any questions or if you wanted any clarification on anything that I'm going to be covering today, we can sit down and chat there. So this is the agenda. I'm going to try and follow it as closely as I can, and of course, professionally speaking, I do hope you guys take something away from each one of the points. Professionally speaking, being on this little stage, I hope to not do anything that lands me on YouTube for the rest of my life. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so I guess the most asked question in Vegas, right? Where am I and who are you? So this is the management track. Welcome to it. My name is Douglas Stirling. I'm with San Diego Self-Storage. Tell you a little bit about myself. So prior to coming to the self-storage industry, I spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you very much. This picture right here was taken in 2006. This was on my last deployment in a place called Karma, Iraq. This is about a stone's throw away from Fallujah. It was actually the bloodiest fighting that our battalion had done in both the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. And what I took away from that experience and those 4 years, of course, was leadership, decision-making, but we also actually faced a lot of your everyday business-type interactions where team development, leadership, of course, there's the high-stress decision-making, but you wouldn't think it, but complacency is actually a thing as well, and that's something that you all face with your day-to-day operations, even with just a simple interaction of a phone call. If your team is complacent, then they're not going to be answering that to the best of their ability. After leaving the Marine Corps, I did focus on my undergraduate education in kinesiology. I did show a bit of an aptitude in systems as well as interactions, so that's why I followed that. I actually had the opportunity to be a research assistant as well. So after that, all that really good science and information served me pretty well when I got my introductory position as a storage consultant, scrubbing toilets and cleaning out empty units. But all I did was have a broom in one hand and became a self-storage sponge in the other hand, learning about lien laws and anything else that pertained to self-storage. That actually was rewarded with my first site. My first site I managed was 75,000 rentable square feet. I was there for about a year and a half. After I showed a bit of success there, I was rewarded with a little bit larger site, and that's the one that you see listed there, which was a little over 100,000 rentable square feet. Now, during that time, I did go ahead and pursue my graduate education, so I actually had a great opportunity to go to one of the best real estate programs in the country at the University of San Diego. It focused on commercial real estate, finance, and development. So that gave me a different side to the self-storage industry, as well as giving me a peek of how we really interact with the real estate industry in general. Currently, right before my graduation, I'm managing 9 sites. About 790,000 rentable square feet, million gross, at least $1 million gross, which comes with its own challenges, and it's also come with a lot of lessons. This has given me the opportunity to really kind of dig in and use those experiences that I learned from the Marine Corps, as well as my education to try and better my company and our portfolio. So if we're going to talk about the systems that do have to do with our customer experience, because that's what ISS is about this year, it's perfecting the customer experience, right? So we have to understand some of those systems in the day-to-day operations that do shape that experience. And if you see up there your phone interactions, your site tour is your first impression to your customer, right? So if you're not taking that seriously, then you're losing out on that opportunity, as well as your rental experience where you have that captive audience. You need to maximize that to the best of your ability, as well as your ongoing customer service. This could be discrepancies, this could be taking payments, this could be taking the water bottle out to the people that are on your property. Those things matter. And if you'll notice, the outside of that customer experience is much larger than the inside, right? The reason being is because that's where our standards and our expectations are set. There's so much training and preparation that goes into those interactions beforehand if we want to actually capitalize on every moment of those interactions. And no matter how we do business, because we all do business differently, It can be broken down into this. You're setting your standards, you're training your people to those standards, and then allowing them to become efficient. It's your duty as the leaders in this room to be helping guide your people, not to just set a standard, because that's basically empty. If you're just saying, do this, but you're not taking the time to actually train and develop them to reach those standards that you're setting, and then allow them in their own unique ways to become efficient at those things. The efficiency of your people, some of them you're going to be able to apply to your other properties. If you're an area manager or a site manager, you might be seeing how one of your people is actually doing something after you've set that standard and trained them. Be like, wow, I didn't even really think of that, right? So you have the opportunity to implement those things. And of course, it's cyclical, because you aren't going to want to stop. Once you start improving, maybe in your whole process, you're changing 3 out of 5 things in a sequence. Well, that doesn't mean that after your team becomes good at those things that you can't go back and revisit those 2 or even revisit the 3 that you had done before. You should always be reassessing where you're at and how you're doing things, especially as important as it is in our day-to-day operations. So I, of course, have to come in with this quote, because this is absolutely something that we run into quite a bit. So insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, right, and expecting a different result. That happens with our training a lot of times. When you're going through your day-to-day and you bring in this new person and you have that drop-off in training, but you haven't taken the time to actually put something in place for when you bring on that new person to actually go against that natural fall in productivity. So self-storage industry, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Well, there's also the business aspect of that. So the business aspect of that is you can't expect to be doing the same thing over and over again and keep getting the same return, right? So you may be happy with your return right now, but so is your competition that might be coming in, right? As the managers, area managers, or owners, operators, you have to understand that your competition is going to be looking at what you're doing well and what you're doing poorly. So, of course, I have to come in with an obligatory sports analogy. So, had to happen. So, the gentleman on the left is Jim Hines. The other gentleman on the right is a little bit more recognizable. That's Usain Bolt. The thing that these men have in common, both of them, of course, are 100-meter sprinters. And they're actually both world record holders. Jim Hines actually did the impossible at that time, which was break the 10-second mark. Right? Came in at 9.99 seconds for a 100-meter dash, thought to be physically impossible. Amazing. Usain Bolt, for the last decade, has been the fastest man alive. Right? Nobody's broken his record yet. The other thing that these men have in common is they were the ones who broke their own records. Right? They understood that making small changes, even though they were already champions, they were record holders, world record holders, they knew that small changes were going to lead to a huge impact. Right? They were looking at what they were doing well, what they could improve on, as well as what the competition was doing to beat them. Right? So that's a championship mentality, is being able to assess yourself and be honest with yourself with where you need to improve and how you're going to stay ahead of the competition. Another thing is if you're looking at that, the competition chasing Usain Bolt, Jim Hines wouldn't have even qualified for that race, because that's how your competition is moving. They're using information, they're using technology to understand the business better and do it better. Especially if you've been in your market for a long time and you've been successful in that market, there are a lot of people. Look around the room. The secret's kind of out. You know, self-storage is a good industry. All right. So if I'm going to tell you why you should change, I'm going to give you a couple little tools on effective ways to elicit some change here. So one of them, this is something that I used before our patrols. It's sometimes called a 5-paragraph order, operation order, or an op order. And what this is saying is I'm not saying, hey, you know what, every email that you should send to your site should be at least 5 paragraphs or else they're just not going to get it. That's not where I'm getting. So being realistic, let's say somebody has a bad audit. That manager, that site manager has the opportunity to go in there and say, hey, we had a bad audit, let's fix it. Team's going to look at him or her and say, okay, that's specific, where do I start? Right? Or you can look at this and say, okay, there should be at least some essential elements to how I'm directing my team if I don't want to, everything that you leave ambiguous is going to be open to interpretation. So this is meant to help you kind of reduce that ambiguity. And if you manage more than one site, then, like in my circumstance, I have 9 sites. If I leave anything ambiguous, I promise you it will be translated 9 different ways and I will come out with 9 different results. But if I have clear communication, so situation can be just easy as that. So let's stick with the example that I gave you of a bad audit. All right, team, situation is we just had a bad audit. Our mission is to change that. We have this, and this. So let's say our file audit needs to happen. We need to go through and hit our different profit centers that we're working with. Our execution, that's who's doing what, when, and why, right? The why is one of the most critical elements because your people need to understand why you're changing something or why they need to improve. They also need to be told exactly what their individual role is. So if any of you have taken any type of CPR training or anything like that, one of the first things that they tell you to do is to delegate to one person. Tell them directly to their face, hey, you call 911, right? Because that tasks that individual. Your individual team members need to understand what their role is. That's the execution part of it. Admin and logistics, that's just as simple as if anything comes up. If anything comes up, here's our tertiary plans. Right? So, or if there's any supplies that need to be happening. Okay, if you have any supplies that need to be reordered, you're going to be coming to me. And command and signal, that's as easy as just saying, okay, once you're done with your task, you're going to go ahead and report to me. I will be reporting to my area manager. Right? So letting them know who they report to and how to report. Especially, the devil's in the details. If you're telling them, oh, I want an email by the end of the month, well, we're 1 week into the month and you shoot me a text. Are we following exactly what my communication was? No. Do we have mission accomplishment? Yes. But the clarity of your communication is going to be essential for you to actually elicit effective, efficient change. Another thing that we have to talk about, of course, is time management. And one of the biggest things that we can talk about is the difference between time management and task management. Because a lot of times we kind of get wrapped up in that. And it is an absolutely great tool for maybe a new team member or even a new manager, right? For them to have tasks, especially a new manager. Sometimes you just want to task your people so you know everything is done right? Okay, I'll handle everything here in the office. I got the headquarters. You guys just task this, task that. But by doing that, you're not teaching them to change, right? Not learning how to change with a changing workflow. You're not teaching them the priorities of the business either. Right? So that's essential for them to be able to make decisions when you're not there. Because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make your team as strong as possible for when you are not there to hold their hand through every single transaction. A great example of task management effectiveness versus time management effectiveness. So let's say you have absolutely tasked this person to death. They have their task list that they go through every single day, which is their personal little pass-fail experience for the day. 10 by 20 premium drive-up unit moves out. They now have this task list, or they can go and clean out that unit and then contact the 5-person wait list that's been waiting for that unit. If they know the priorities of the business, they're going to head out there, they're going to clean that unit, they're going to go ahead and call every single person on that list until they have a reservation, and then they're going to go back to that list and understand the priorities that are in place. Okay, these things on the list are what are priority for business. These are what are important to the business. And if you want your people to be empowered to be able to make effective, efficient decisions for your business, that's where you need to get away from the task management and help to teach them time management. All right, and coverage. So just to kind of touch on this really quickly, coverage is based off of your goals, and it's not something that's set in stone. One of the things that you'll hear all the time, and personally, if I got $1 for every time that I heard, well, that's just how we did it, I would be up here speaking as an owner, not as an area manager, right? So one of the things that you have to look at is saying, all right, what are my goals? If your goal is just to reduce your payroll, then so be it. Your goal is to reduce your payroll. But if you think you're going to stretch that superstar thin for 12 hours out of the day and say that that's the most effective way that you can run your business, you may want to reassess that. Now, again, on the flip side of that, if you're trying to have some type of boutique experience where you're walking everybody out to their unit and unlocking it for them and then bringing them tea and water, okay, then that's what you want to be doing. But you do have to constantly analyzing your coverage. and realizing how it's affecting your business and your business goals. I give an example up there of the overlap. One of the things that you have to do, especially if we're talking about becoming more efficient, setting these new standards, retasking our people, is you have to see, okay, what's my opportunity window for that? If you only have a 1 hour overlap, but you're trying to do some massive maintenance project out on your property, 1 hour of overlap, you're basically telling your person, I want you to ignore customer service and sales, and I want you to go out and do those maintenance tasks, right? If you haven't adjusted the coverage for your site to be more effective towards that goal or that new standard. All right. So let's kind of jump into the efficiency, the trifecta that we were talking about of efficiency, training, and standards. So if any of you are familiar with Dr. Covey's 7 Habits, there's a topic that he talks about called an emotional bank account. Basic idea of that is that you walk around every single day making deposits and withdrawals into the emotional bank account of the people that you interact with. And the closer you are to those people, the more significant the withdrawal or the deposit. Right? So think of that on the same idea with your customers. Everything that you're showing them as far as efficiency and the smoothness of the way that you do business, that is almost like depositing into their emotional bank account, right? You're showing them that you have respect for their time, right? It's an outward show that, and when I talk about the investment of getting into efficiency, I'm not just talking about a financial investment. This is just an investment of you, the leaders in this room, your time of training your people to get better. All right. So, what's the difference between professionalism and proficiency, right? And which one is better? So, if you think about it, right now, the way that the consumer market is changing and the self-storage industry is changing, you can't be one or the other. I know the old analogy of, oh, you know what? I'd rather have a good doctor with bad bedside manner, right? That's a 1,000-year-old analogy. But nowadays, the expectation is that you are both. What you have to do is understand the difference between those two, because professionalism is just an image. It's the way that you are speaking with your customer. Proficiency is how well you do your job. So if I'm professional, that's great. If I'm professional when I speak to my customers, but if it takes me 2 hours to do one rental agreement, they don't care how professional I am or how professional my appearance is. They're concerned about their time and anything that you're doing to efficiently move throughout your day. So good example would be a merchandise purchase or just merchandise in general. One of the things that we kind of get caught up in is streamlining how our office looks, right? So if you sell merchandise at your site, one of the things that you can get wrapped up in is, okay, well, I'm going to store my merchandise in a unit off to the side. If anybody buys anything, I'll just truck it over to the storage unit and grab the merchandise for that person. That is not the expectation of today's consumer. They expect immediate gratification. If you're sitting there finishing that transaction and then say, okay, well, just give me 5 minutes. I just got to go run out with my set of keys and open up that storage unit really quick and go grab your boxes for you. Depending on how long they're sitting there, they could probably have already set up a date. They could have ordered their dinner. And if they're sitting there for longer than 5 minutes, I guarantee you they're looking at your reviews. You've also basically taken off the board the opportunity that this person is going to come back to you for a rental when they need it. They're going to be looking at the price side of it, or they're going to actually be shopping around when you actually had the opportunity. You had this captive audience that you could have shown them how customer-centric you are, how easy it is to do business with you, and that would have stuck in their mind, but you're not maximizing every interaction. Also, where can you make an immediate impact? So one of the things that I've been talking about is efficiency of movement or purposeful organization. One of the things, if we're talking about a rental experience, so that rental experience, if you're not organized in your office, let's just go with your office. If you're not organized in a way that you can face that captive customer, the entire interaction, then you're losing out on capitalizing on that interaction, right? Because this is your opportunity to actually start doing any of your upsells that you have, any of your merchandise purchases, any of those things, if you can keep that person engaged. That eye contact, that engagement, yes, it gives them the genuine experience, but it also sets you up for success to maximize that. So if you're trying to get a review or you're trying to get those add-ons, if you're turning your back to that customer, then that's showing them how important you are. If you're not bundling your paperwork, let's make it easy. If you have more than one piece of paper and it's not bundled and ready to go for that brand new customer, I know it's a small thing, but those types of small things are what are going to show the customer that you respect their time. I am trying to streamline this for you as much as possible. Here you are. All right, and if we're looking at a phone sale is easy as setting a standard on that one. If you can kind of look at it and say, okay, what are the materials that I'm doing or that I have next to each phone so that my people are prepared? What's the standard that you have? Is there a standard? Do you know the types of questions that your people are asked during a sales conversation over the phone, if they are even answering the phone, or even during that initial site tour? If you do, those materials should be required to be right in front of their face so that you can maximize that face-to-face interaction, right? And if we're going with the rental experience as well, you can talk about getting more efficient at asking for reviews, because we all know you're going to go through today and there's going to be 1,000 different ways that people are going to tell you how important reviews are. Well, if you've set a standard in place of when and how they're going to present it to your customer, then again, you've maximized that small amount of time. All right, and again, to go back to identifying systems, right? The standards, the training, the efficiency. It doesn't go straight from standards to efficiency, right? There has to be a training element, and that's where a lot of the leaders come in play. You, of course, are setting the standard for your site, but you're also responsible for making your team as strong as possible and understanding exactly how to reach those goals. So let's go into, this is a picture of my training experience. So this is where I learned corporate leadership right here, is getting screamed at in my face, which was a great 3 months of my life. But what a lot of people tell me when I tell them that I was in the military is they tell me, oh man, I would have done that, but I probably would have punched that drill instructor in the face. Probably not, but okay. But by telling me that, you also miss or don't understand the goal of the exercise of boot camp. It's teaching you discipline, right? It's teaching a shared goal amongst your peers. It's teaching you accountability, right? Of course, it's a stress test, but those are the initial parts of it. It's seeing if you have the discipline to go through something like this and have somebody screaming in your face and having that, what we call military bearing, to be able to handle it. That's discipline. It's just teaching that core principle of discipline. And that's what you have to take into account when you're training your teams as well. You have to be looking at what your objectives are. And your objectives are the same, right? This is a team. Whether you have 1 site, 10 sites, 20 sites, this is a team, and you are trying to get towards whatever the objective is. And if we're talking about setting those standards, if you're setting a standard and you're putting it across all of your sites, right, you're setting yourself up for success, but you're also creating a more team-based training environment, right? Because if you have different expectations for each one of your sites, different standards and expectations, right, it's pretty tough to have to go to each and every site to try and train them to their individual standards, your individual expectations for that site. So some of the training principles that I kind of like to use, it's kind of a checklist for you, but it's an academic period, right? This is just a low pressure, you might even call it an orientation if it's a new person, but if you're trying to train a new principal, maybe you're training a new system, there needs to be a period of time where that person has the opportunity to learn the material. If you're jumping in, let's use that new hire. If you're jumping in directly to, okay, here's how you do this task, this task, this task, so that way I can get you on the board and I can start you opening this property. That's not setting your person up for the long-term future success. What you need to do is you need to be telling them about the industry. You need to be telling them about your company culture. You need to be giving them as much of a foundation to learn from as possible in a low-pressure academic time frame. One of the other things is no freestyling, right? The training materials that you have to provide for your trainer. And if that trainer is your site manager, if you're an area manager and your trainer is your manager, you need to give them the materials that they're going to need to train their people. And you need to be providing the same materials to each person, right? This is to avoid the freestyling, yes, but you get those dips in what's important to a person, right? If it's something that just came up yesterday that I just got coached on or that I just coached somebody on, then the training experience is different if I haven't provided the training materials for that trainer. You're also limiting yourself. The way that you're limiting yourself is you're just going off of basically the skills and abilities of that trainer if you're not providing them anything. Just because somebody is good at something or just because somebody's a killer manager does not mean they are a good teacher. If that is your training model, take a look at it. Provide them with those materials. Provide them with some type of structure because people like that. They like to be able to go down that list and be, okay, I did cover this. They like to know where those deficiencies are. It also makes it easier for you when we start to reassess how we're training our people. Now, a progressive training schedule, that goes without saying, right? Because we are trying to build them up. That's the idea. We don't try and teach them the most in-depth task from day 2. Okay, welcome to the company. Here's your orientation. This is where the gate is. This is where the people will come at you point blank. All right, there you go. Here's your keys. Have a great day. No, you're progressively building them up. You're teaching them those expectations that you have and those standards that you've set. And people like that structure. They like to know what's going to be expected of them. And of course, feedback is critical to this whole process. You need to be getting feedback from the trainer, but you also need to be down the road. You need to be getting feedback from those people that you're training. They are going to give you the most honest feedback. If you come back to a person that you trained 3 months ago and say, hey, what could I have done to set you up for more success? Then they're absolutely going to tell you, I wish I would have learned this. I wish I would have learned that. Your trainer, if you ask them immediately after saying, hey, you ask them, what could I have provided you to train this person better? They'll tell you, yeah, I feel like there was gaps here, here, and here where I had to kind of fill in the blank for this person, right? That's awesome feedback for you to actually take, reassess, looking at your training materials, put that in for the next round. Hopefully you're not having a ton of turnover, but, right? Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. That's where this fits in. And now that we've established what we mean by efficiency, capitalizing on those small interactions that we have to make the customer experience, we have to talk about the standard of excellence. And to me, the United States Marine Corps is the standard of excellence. This is where leadership, accountability, honor, courage, commitment, all of those things come into play. But the biggest asset that the Marine Corps has is its leaders. That's what makes the Marine Corps so effective, because the Marine Corps holds its leaders accountable. And that's exactly what you have to do. If you want to actually set a new standard for your property, it is not just, okay, hey everybody, here's a list of all the stuff that we're going to be awesome at tomorrow. Go get them. Sorry, that's not going to work. You actually need to hold yourself accountable for any of the deficiencies as well through that training process. It's on you to actually be that leader and follow up on the training. Make sure that you're continuing to develop. See if anybody's falling behind on any of the principles that you've taught them, as well as use lessons from your team to help their peers and help other managers. If you can take those different lessons that you're learning as a leader, you shouldn't be standing on your pedestal that saying, hey, I know everything. I am going to do awesome. Do it this way. That's not being a leader. That might be being a manager, but that's not being a leader. And so if you actually want to elicit the change, then you need to take that very, very seriously when you are trying to train and develop your people to these new standards and expectations. Now, like I said, the uniform standards is essential, but how are you defining those terms? How do you define a good employee? Can you think about it right now, and in your mind, think, what is a good employee? If you can't define that, your people can't either. They might be thinking, I'm a good employee, I show up on time. Okay, that might be a minimum standard some places, but that's not the standard that you want to be setting if you're going to be continuing to improve your business and continuing to improve your people, right? So what's better? When you're telling your team, this goes back to the communication element of it. If you're telling your team, I need you to do better. Okay, well, if I got 10 rentals last month, I got 11 this month, killing it in the game, right? Because you're not defining it. You're not saying, this is how I want you to do better, and this is what my expectation of better is. And best, that's easy, right? That's comparative analysis. That's looking at, okay, well, here's my worst employee. Well, here's my best employee in comparison. But do your people understand where the minimum expectation is? And that's where this bell curve comes in. This won't change. The average performer versus the low performer or the high performer. This won't change. You will always have your a few high performers, and there will be a ton of people that fall into that average performance. But the thing that you have the opportunity to do as the leaders in setting those standards is you get to decide where that midline is. You decide what your average employee is, right? I pride myself. I want my people, I want them to be better than the superstars of the properties down the street. And that's where I set my standards. As we improve, I don't just sit on that. I go ahead and keep trying to push that bar, right? That's what you have to do. When you walk away from here with all the information that you're going to be getting from ISS today, you need to take that information and start raising that bar for yourselves and for your organizations. It's your obligation as the leaders of your organization. All right, so that concludes my presentation. I appreciate your guys' attention. And again, I'll be at Andros A if you needed any clarification on anything or if you have any questions. Thank you so much.